From the Delhi studios of Republic TV, it's time for Arnab Goswami on the debate.
Arnab Goswami on the debate at 9. Presented by Amity University. Powered by RP Sanjeev Goenka Group. Acco Health Insurance. Century Laminates. And PolicyBazaar.com.
Good evening and welcome. The same-sex marriage verdict of the Supreme Court is out, and it is a 3-2 judgment. While the Supreme Court has rejected the right to marry, rejected, and I underline, rejected the right to marry, and said that given the basic separation of powers, this, that is, people from the same sex entering into marriage, is a matter not for the court to decide, but for the parliament to decide. This view comes as a huge surprise to the liberal lobby. The government, through the Solicitor General, has welcomed the verdict of the Supreme Court, saying that it balances the individual's interests with society's interest. The LGBTQ community has in part said that this is a moment of 2 steps forward, even though it's not the biggest victory that they hoped for. And my take, ladies and gentlemen, is that every citizen must have equal rights, including the right to marry. But that legislation must be the voice of Parliament. There has to be a respect to the legislative process, to the electoral mandate, to the role of the elected government of the country. In a democracy, everything can't be decided by the courts. I respect the courts and the Honorable CJI-led bench for its wisdom today, because the courts have taken an intellectual and constitutional position on a matter which is of dear faith. I have fought for gay rights. I have fought for gender rights and its equality, but I think it's time for a public debate, not dissonance on this subject. We cannot at the same time trample over cultural considerations or the voice of Parliament to deliver gay rights in its absolute. There is a process. We cannot undermine that process. We cannot keep attacking the legislative process. We cannot keep questioning the right of the executive. We cannot put every and any subject for the courts to decide on. Tomorrow, will people say the courts should decide what should be the military policy of a country? Will people say that the courts should decide what is the strategic policy or the foreign policy of the country? And I believe tonight that while many may be disheartened, putting the onus on Parliament and the centre, saying they will form a panel on it after the judiciary has pronounced its outlook, is a big step in the right direction, and one in which every pillar of democracy is functioning in unison. Ladies and gentlemen, there are the courts, but there are many pillars on which our society and our social organization operates, ladies and gentlemen. Not even one of them can be put down in favor of the other. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, debate number 1 tonight is on the Supreme Court putting the onus on Parliament on the same-sex marriage issue, and why the LGBTQ community must understand. And debate number 2 tonight, I've been saying it and I will say it even more strongly today. As Israel prepares for a big counter-offensive, remember, people in India, I shall tell you why this is our war too. This is our war too. It is in our interest that the Hamas is crushed. That's at 10 p.m. And here are the headlines this Tuesday evening on the debate tonight.
exercise of the power of judicial review must be careful not to tread into the legislative domain. It is clarified that this court has not adjudicated upon the validity of any laws other than the SMA, the FMA, the adoption regulations, and the Kara circular.
Same-sex marriage is not legalized. The top court says that the legislature, Parliament, must take a decision on that. The centre is to form a committee to decide on the legality of same-sex marriages. Yet it's a big step forward in LGBTQ rights as the top court observes that queerness is neither an urban nor an elite concept. As Israel continues to hit back hard, the Hamas chief's son is killed in Israeli airstrikes. US President Joe Biden to visit Israel tomorrow and then head to Jordan to hold a very critical meeting.
There is an alert which has been given by, as you can hear, there are explosions which has been underway, and we have been reporting from Kibbutz Peri. As you can see, there are explosion that has been, the rocket that has been fired by the Hamas terrorist.
And fearless reporting by Team Republic from the epicenter of Israel and the Hamas war. Ladies and gentlemen, the Supreme Court judgment on same-sex marriage is a milestone for LGBTQ rights in India. Though same-sex marriage is not yet legalized, the top court has emphasized on the separation of powers and has made it clear that Parliament must decide and legislate on the issue. There is therefore a very long road ahead for LGBTQ rights in India, but this is a step forward. Before we debate, here are the highlights of the Supreme Court's verdict today.
10 days of marathon hearings in Supreme Court.
The first argument is whether or not it is invalid, it goes to even existence, or whether it is only an irregularity or a curable defect. I'll come to that later, but assuming it is the worst.
And now, in a step forward towards LGBTQ rights, Supreme Court has put the onus on Parliament to legislate on the issue.
Whether a change should be brought into the legislative regime of the SMA is for Parliament to determine. Parliament has access to varied sources of information and represents in itself a diversity of viewpoints in the polity. The court, in the exercise of the power of judicial review, must be careful not to tread into the legislative domain. It is clarified that this court has not adjudicated upon the validity of any laws other than the SMA, the FMA, the adoption regulations, and the Kara circular.
There were 4 judgments by the 5-judge bench with a degree of disagreement. But there was unanimity on the issue that queerness is neither an urban or elitist concept.
The discussion in this segment has not scratched the surface of the rich history of the lives of LGBTQ persons in India, which continue into the present. Yet even the limited exploration of the literature and reportage on the subject makes it abundantly clear that homosexuality or queerness is not solely an urban concept, nor is it restricted to the upper classes of privileged communities. Urban centers are themselves geographically and socially divided along the lines of class, religion, and caste, and not all those who live in cities can be termed elite merely by virtue of their residence in cities.
Supreme Court has noted that Centre will form a high-powered panel to examine the rights of the community.
Legal consequences such as succession rights, maintenance, financial benefits such as under the Income Tax Act 1961, rights flowing from employment such as gratuity and family pension and insurance. The report of the committee chaired by the Cabinet Secretary shall be implemented at the administrative level by the Union Government and the governments of the states and the Union Territories.
The balanced judgment of Supreme Court was largely received positively.
First step towards, the right of marriage and equal status and equal citizenship to this beautiful and brave community. And I see this as the first step. At least 2 of the 5 judges have recognized the right of a civil union, which I think means a lot to the whole community. Of course, overall, the community would be disheartened.
The statements that were made, and it again put the onus on the central government and the state government to legislate laws, to get in laws to recognize same-sex relationships. That is the need of the hour, and if there is any state government or a central government person who is working in that favor, I think it will do a great deal of good as well.
If one person adopts a child as a single parent and then enters into a partnership or is already in a partnership, right? Then the other person who does the work of parenting must get the same parental rights, and there is an opportunity here.
Solicitor General Tushar Mehta said that same-sex marriage judgment balances individual interest with society interest, gives an important understanding on the question of separation of powers, and provides insight into the working of Parliament, Executive and Judiciary as per the Constitution. With a step taken towards LGBTQ rights, India has a long way to go before same-sex marriage rights are legalized. Let's debate.
Now, I don't want to be politically correct about this and say, yes, the court did not allow same-sex marriage, but it is a great step forward. I want to be blunt about it. I think the LGBTQ community did not get what they were expecting for. And I think it is important not to clutch at straws, Niharika, and I want to ask you first, Niharika Karanjawala Mishra, lawyer for the petitioners and principal associate at Karanjawala. Also joined by Abhishek Rai and Chaitanya Sharma, the first gay couple to wed in Kolkata. I'm joined by Sonal Giani, LGBTQ activist, very anti-LGBTQ voice, Pramila Nesargi, lawyer, and Hitesh Jain, well-known advocate, who's been working on this from Mumbai. Firstly, Niharika, let's not clutch at straws. I think if the LGBTQ community were to say more openly that they are disappointed, it would be a more honest statement than trying to say, no, I know we didn't get what we want, but we should be happy at this provision of what this judge of this bench, which was in a minority, said. I don't know why since this morning that's been the kind of narrative that's coming out.
No, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think there is a lot of disappointment, but let's not forget the fact that this is a community that has seen a lot of discrimination and has seen a lot of struggle, that just until a few years ago, even the thought of their relationships was considered to be illegal. So they're a very resilient community from that perspective. And what I have seen is, what I believe at least is, it's not just for show or to make a statement to say, oh, okay, well, maybe we got this. There is a genuine sense of resilience of, yes, we're disappointed, quite shattered. We didn't get this from the Supreme Court. However, okay, the fight will continue. The fight now moves into a different domain. It moves to Parliament. It moves to our elected representatives to see if they'll put their money where their mouth is and actually step up and give us these rights as their electorate. So while I totally agree with you that a more disappointed,
let's not try to make the LGBTQ community too hopeful about that. No. One second. Let's not try and infuse hope into the LGBTQ community falsely. Because we have seen that in this country, even something much more innocuous like the Women's Reservation Bill has been put in the cold storage for more than 20 years.
Oh, yes.
Right?
And I think, and I totally agree with you.
And that has required the political will of a Narendra Modi government to initiate. No. I don't think politicians have the guts, courage or keenness.
Of any political party.
No political party will go against the grain by actually legalizing LGBTQ marriages. No political party will put in its manifesto that if it comes to power, I'm just being realistic out here, Hitesh. Pramila, am I right? Am I being realistic here, Pramila and Sonal? I believe no political party will put it in its manifesto that it wants same-sex marriage. Nobody will. So basically, I think the Supreme Court has put it back to the politicians, knowing fully well the politicians won't do anything. What are you concerned with?
The question is whether politicians do or not. Now the Supreme Court, say this subject is in the concurrent list. Any party whichever is in the power in the opposition need not be Narendra Modi. Why should they not introduce? They can do it. Why they are not coming forward? No political party. For that matter, each individual in this country, every citizen has got fundamental rights. Now the Supreme Court has said marriage is not a fundamental right. Well, forget about it. It applies equally to all citizens. None of them claim that we have a fundamental right. Now, there can be equality between equals. Now you have to consider what is equality. Now you are thinking of a marriage. See, when we think of the marriage, we think of void marriage, we think of voidable marriage, and then when we go to court, we also file a case for nullity when there is no consummation of marriage. Now, do you think there is consummation between the same sex? If you say there is consummation, then we'll think of it. There is no consummation of marriage. They live together as two different individuals. So they have a different rights. Every citizen has a right. So it is for the government or for the parliament to decide who they are. They have to define them, what their rights are. If they have a right to live together, how their rights are recognized, what are the rights that they could be given, if they want to separate, under what circumstances they can be separated, whether they have any other individual rights, house accommodation or any other accommodation. What are the things they learn? It is for the committee which is coming to force. They have to decide. Then we'll apply our mind and tell whether these people can be called as normal human beings or separate. If they are
firstly, you should not keep referring to them as these people.
Treatment,
I think that's a very, I think it's a very, very unnecessary. You know, constantly, Pramilaji, you keep referring to them as these people. Kindly don't do that. But I want to ask here, please, Abhishek and Chaitanya and Sonal, so I place it before everyone. My own view is that the LGBTQ community was not looking at getting things like ration cards and gratuity and sharing of bank accounts. This battle was not about things like that. And you can't give a consolation prize to a community. My view is you rather give nothing at all than turn around and say, will the centre please look into whether they can have ration cards or gratuity or whatever. I mean, the sum and substance of it is that. That was not the issue was marriage. Am I wrong here in assessing that way, Chaitanya and Abhishek? The issue was same-sex marriage. The legalization of same-sex marriage. It was not about gratuity and ration cards.
Yes, Arnab, you are absolutely right. The issue was absolutely about legalizing same-sex marriage, and along with that, all the fundamental rights that come along. So that is what we are deprived of, and I don't think there is any other way that we can achieve this apart from giving us these. Like today morning, once the session started, we were all feeling quite hopeful and we were all looking towards like a better future for us. But I guess towards the end of the session, the way the verdict came out, we are pretty much left with the same void that we had started this entire debate all about. So
and since we actually lost the hope from the government, we reached out to Parliament, we reached out to Supreme Court, expecting that this same-sex marriage will be legalized. But I think we are on same place that from where we started. So it was not only about the Marriage Act. We clearly mentioned we are facing challenges in day-to-day work as well, like adoption, maybe bank account, or maybe a healthcare sector. We are facing a lot of challenges.
Come with getting the gay marriage legalized. Okay? And we are the exact amount of the same taxpayers. We are doing everything, whatever is required of us as to being like a civilian or a citizen of India. So why would we be deprived of the basic rights that we deserve?
And judges clearly mentioned that everyone have right to unity, and this gay community people or the queer community people have full right to full right to entertain or enjoy the fundamental rights, right? So why still the ball is on government court? Why we are still hoping that one day government will do something which they have never done so far? Well, and they were saying they have given clear guidelines to government to create awareness. But do you think the awareness was created in the last 5 days? It was not done. So we are in same place from where we started.
No, I see. Well, I think one comes back to square one.
I can add to
and
that,
what I feel is what is not honest today is if there is an Sonal, you know, just to you itself, I'm asking, there is a false sense of hope being given to the LGBTQ community. That there is a sliver of hope in all this. I wish things were to be put more transparently to them. And I think, at least that's my take. What's your take, Sonal? Yeah. But you know, at the same time, Sonal, the other contrary argument is that the LGBTQ community cannot expect to change the law at will to suit itself, not thinking about the sentiments of the rest of the population.
Sure. Yes, of course. So I think definitely, Arnab, that it was of course a very big momentous occasion for us because, you know, getting marriage rights part of just your entire makeup, your entire being, your entire life. And I think people were very excitedly awaiting this judgment, including me, hoping that I could, or, you know, all of us could get married to our partners this year. But the way the judgment has come, what we have essentially got is that, you know, we have to wait till a parliamentary committee sits on it. We don't have a sense of timeline. We don't know who will be representing us. You know, how many years now more do we have to plan our life. So essentially it is a turning point in our life in just entirely planning what life ahead looks like. And, you know, for people who are older, it's even tougher. So yes, I think it would have been better not to give any kind of sliver of hope and being upfront and very clear about, you know, how you want this to sort of be done. It's not like the community hasn't tried at different levels, even through different parties to introduce, but we are not a voter bank. And that's something that a community will go back and learn. And it's a little, it's also disappointing because there were slivers of hope, just like you mentioned that, okay, you know, in the first half, we were like, okay, they're recognizing us as individuals. They are talking about, you know, things like civil union. They're talking about adoption. And just to find that in the latter half of the, you know, the judgments coming out to be constantly squashed. Frankly, my emotions were feeling like a table tennis ball, like, you know, going from one place to the another. And this is the feeling of the community. And I think people don't realize we are people at the end of the day. Many people have broken down after this judgment because, frankly, it's about your life, right? Like, if this camera closes, our life continues. So, yeah, over to you, Arnab.
Yep. Yeah, no, I wanted to bring in Hitesh's perspective out here. And to this, we must also open up to the view on the other side. I welcome Deepa, Ishwar and Hitesh. Hitesh to give us the legal perspective. Hitesh, when you're hearing this today, they're human beings too. They're saying we're feeling crushed, we're feeling disappointed, we're feeling broken. Especially older people who are wanting to get married, for them that sliver of hope is gone away. And they're saying that even more cruel is the fact that there is no timeline before us. You know, because obviously no political party, not a single political party in India is saying that it is for same-sex marriage. So it'll take generation upon generation upon generation to come even close to building a consensus for this subject. So isn't this terrible? Isn't it cruel, Hitesh? And how can one justify this cruelty?
Arnab, first and foremost, these proceedings were not adversarial proceedings. It was not that the government was for or against the LGBT community. As far as the government is concerned, the government made very clear, had taken a very clear stand before the Supreme Court that they acknowledge the rights that flow to the community as has been recognized by the Supreme Court in the case of Navteej Singh and Nalsa. They acknowledge and recognize the rights. Now the question is, how will the rights flow? Will the rights flow from the court or will the rights flow from the legislature? According to me, Arnab, the petitioners were not guided properly. Someone would have advised them that, you know, you can go to the court, seek a couple of declarations that marriage is a fundamental right and seek a striking down of Section 4 and then the job will be done. Arnab, this is not easy. People just copy the Western doctrine. They look at the judgments in the America and they feel that blindly the same legislative principles can be applied in India. We have to understand, we have hundreds of personal laws. We have 160 other law acts which are dependent upon the personal laws. There are rights of marriage, there are rights of succession. These are all, so all these rights are there. Now, to expect the judiciary to pass an order encompassing regarding the rights, as a lawyer and in my experience, I thought this was a very impossible task. To give any hopes to this community was cruel, and such hope should not have been given. The correct approach could have been there to build a consensus, to build a debate, to go to the lawmakers, take the issue to the parliament, which is the correct forum. And if you will notice in the words of Justice Chandrachud today, when you deal with the doctrine of separation of powers, there are certain essential functions of one arm of the state.
But why was it not? No, 1 second.
If it is simply arguments of
a simple question comes to my mind. A simple question comes to my mind. A simple question comes to my mind with the greatest of respect to the courts. If you are saying this is not a matter within the court's domain anyway, which appears to be the core of your argument, what you are trying to say is that this is not a matter for the courts to decide on, and the courts knew about it. But then the courts heard it. The courts prolonged the arguments. Well, why was the matter entertained in the court in the first place?
So, Arnab, this is
you see, my question is a commonsensical question is, one minute, Hitesh. This question is to you only, but my question is, you see, when people from the LGBTQ community see such prolonged hearings and eminent lawyers give various positions and observations of the court which appear to be leaning on this side and that, I know the observations are not binding and the observations are not ordered, but you see the media begins to headline certain observations of the court, Hitesh. And when people from the LGBT community watch and read these headlines, they feel, oh, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. And at the end of it, what is a downer is the fact that we are told that the matter was never in the court's domain. So I don't understand this, Niharika. If the matter was not for the courts to look at, then why did the courts look at it? If the matter is not within the judicial space, then why encourage the discussion for so long? Pardon me, yeah. The courts have so many things to do.
Arnab,
so many pending proceedings.
I got a matter that was in India.
Arnab,
would the Chief Justice of India have constituted a constitutional bench to hear the matter
Arnab,
if it was not something that was within the court's domain, saying that it was within the court, out of the court's domain?
Sorry, I'm just losing your audio there, Niharika.
I don't think so. I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
No, but that's what the argument comes down to, no? That it is, yeah, but the argument comes down to that, right, Hitesh, that it is not within the court's domain at all. And the courts come and say that we are not here effectively to subvert the legislative process. But that was not the sense I got listening to what's been going on in the courts for the last few months.
The petitioner had gone to the court.
And years, in fact.
See,
Hitesh.
Arnab, you have to look at the two aspects. You have to also recognize the right of the petitioner to seek an answer from the court. To that extent, the court says, yes, you have a right to approach the court. The second question is, as to can we grant the relief, whether the marriage is fundamental right. There is an authoritative pronouncement from the Supreme Court, unanimous by all the 5 judges, that marriage is not a fundamental right, it is a statutory right. To that extent, the court has given a very clear finding. To the extent whether you can read the same-sex marriage in section 4, the court says, no, we are not going to read. It has to be, if we will be reading, then we will be doing the job of the legislature. Then the question of the rights come, where the court has very clearly observed that it is in the domain of the legislature to grant the rights, because it is not the job of the court to look at the 160 acts and pass the law. The job of passing the law is of the legislature.
No, but what is the central argument right now? I mean, see, I'm trying to look at the case where it stands right. Are we saying that this matter is completely for politicians to decide now? That the BJP Aam Aadmi Party, India Alliance will all have to sit together and say, can LGBTQ members get married? And I challenge you, the fact of the matter is, Deepa, you know, no political party will say in their manifesto or a stated policy that we are for same-sex marriage. Is there any political party which does that, Deepa? Is there any political party which is doing it now or will do it even 10 years from now, Deepa,
No.
Pramila? Nobody will do it, which means the full chapter is closed.
No, no.
Right here, right now, in a way.
Nobody will do it.
And why keep false hope for the LGBTQ community then?
No.
Will anybody do it, Deepa?
Yeah, Arnabji, I just
do you
wanted to
think?
say that, listening to my fellow panelists and, and representatives from the community, I want to initially say that if at any point you feel that I'm speaking against or I'm speaking disrespectfully to this community, please forgive me for that, because that's not in my thoughts. I have friends from this community, and I really feel the disappointment you are feeling today, because I have been on this side waiting for the Supreme Court verdict on another issue, and I've gone through the same disappointment. I've protested. Having said that, I would also like to put on records that we have no, a phobia or homophobia, or we were totally for decriminalization. We totally hate the set of people who cyberbully these, this community. So we have friends and we spend time with people. But at the same time, marriage, I feel, is something a little too significant a step and a little too quick a step for a nation like India, where, marriage has been a very, I wouldn't say that there are no divorces, that's not what I would say is it's a successful family experiment which has gone on between a man and a woman for years and years. Now, at that particular point, it's considered to be extremely important. It involves a future generation, and there are a lot of questions and still studies.
So I want you to no 1 minute. Don't even make it theoretical. There is a couple here on television. They need to be on air, not me. Can they be put on air exactly where they were? Back to those boxes. I want you to say this to Abhishek and Chaitanya. They are on the program, they are listening to you. They, in their private capacity, have decided to wed. They are staying in Kolkata. I'm sure life is not easy for them, right? They would have taken a decision. Why make this debate theoretical? Tell them why they are not fit to marry. Tell them and let them respond to you, Deepa. Let's not keep the theory out of the debate.
More the studies which are primarily based on...
No, there's no theory. There's very personal.
No, but you cannot take it.
Since you're making a judgment.
The court of the nation cannot take decisions based on personal choices, right? They need to consider what's good for the future. And I'm not saying this is not good for the future, but there needs to be adequate evidence and there needs to be fully answered questions around this topic. And that is where we're still stuck, whether this is the right step or not. At a future point, if we are all convinced that this is, forget all of us, but if the court is convinced that yes, this is
you can't take a decision for Abhishek. You can't take a decision for these two gentlemen who are in Kolkata. You can't take a decision for them. You seem to be, you and Pramila are giving yourself the right to decide for them.
Supreme Court accepted.
Please respond. Yeah, go on, Chaitanya.
As two consenting adults,
can I have them in the window in the middle responding to?
As two consenting adults who have reached up and so nobody needs to be worried about the future of two consenting adults who are actually planning to get married and deciding to live together, because that is what gives them happiness and that is their particular decision. So I don't think there is any theory to back this up. So I absolutely disagree with what she's saying.
So I think it's like same thing that we also said earlier, that's 90% population still going to decide how the 10% population going to live their life. And it's happening right now, it's going to happen in the future as well, what we can see from the verdict. Supreme Court accepted this, that people have right to unity, and they accepted it's not an urban concept. At the same time, they are saying you don't have right to marry. You should have all the fundamental rights, but you don't have the right to marry. And in India, the law is structured in such a way, if you're not legally married, you cannot entertain or you cannot enjoy the other fundamental rights. So, if you ask us,
no, but
like we are socially married, we are not legally married.
Chaitanya,
and what happens
Chaitanya and Abhishek.
In case of medical emergency.
Yes, Pramila.
No. No, marriage has nothing to do with the fundamental right. Everyone, each individual has got a fundamental right. Question is whether their marriage could be registered.
Hitesh and Pramila.
That's the reason why the matter has gone to court.
Right.
So you are asking me why the Supreme Court entertained. Supreme Court entertained to find out whether the right
if there is a medical emergency,
that whether I can marry, whether it can come under fundamental right. No, the Supreme Court has said that marriage is not a fundamental right. No, I will tell you whether a marriage could be registered. If so, when a marriage could be registered. If a marriage is valid, it can be registered. Now the question is, the definition of marriage says, if marriage is not consummated, it's a ground for divorce. If it is, here is the case, there is no consummation of the marriage, so there is no valid marriage. How you can expect a marriage to be registered? Tell me how it could be registered.
Cannot be
static. You can only be recognized.
But okay. Now, 1 minute. Pramila ji. 1 minute. Pramila ji. At the same time. Let me argue from the other side right now, Niharika and Sonal, and say that for the LGBTQ community to say that there is, in India, things are not changing is wrong. Because I think, Sonal and Niharika, so many things have happened. Supreme Court has decriminalized gay sex. The Madras High Court has banned medical attempts to cure sexual orientation. LGBTQ persons are allowed to apply for Central Adoption Review Authority. Supreme Court Collegium has openly backed the gay judge, Mr. Saurabh Kripal. So I don't understand why one is not looking at all of these things, which are changes which have happened. And these, what I'm trying to say is, Niharika and Sonal, is that if someone were to say to you that you can't have a change like this, you can't have a 180-degree change overnight. Small steps. Be ready for small steps. Let society change, mindset change, and laws change after that. You can't have laws changing and then mindsets changing.
Supreme Court.
You know?
Arnab, if you will notice, I agree with what you're saying, Arnab, and I agree that there have been a lot of
suggestion made by the Solicitor General of India that a committee headed by the Cabinet Secretary will be appointed who will look into the different aspects of the rights, and they will come with some solution for the various problems that is being faced by the community. So I think we are making a progress, but there is a method to the madness, and we have to take one step at a time and a step in a right direction.
Madness.
And according to me, and I'm stating this most responsibly,
I think just
10 seconds for every speaker, that if Supreme Court would have tried to pass any judicial direction, it would have done more harm than good to the LGBT community. If the Supreme Court could have made a judicial intervention and could have passed certain directions, it would have done more harm than good for the LGBT community. It would have created chaos, it would have had unintended consequences, and we would have been again back to square one in the state of absolute confusion and chaos. So what the Supreme Court has done, it has thrown back to the legislature, and when it says that it has thrown back to the legislature, it has thrown back the ball in the court of the public to come debate, build a consensus, and look at the steps that can be taken in the future.
Okay, I take that. Sonal wanted to respond to you at that point. Sonal.
No, so I think Arnab, I'm in complete agreement with you. I'm actually very proud of how India has actually really proved to be very much I think LGBT friendly and grown to understand the community so much in the past few years. Having said that, but I would also like to say that I think that it's not about the incremental steps or that we don't understand this will take time. It's about the reality that there is a complete ambiguity in your life, and this is the constant, right? You don't know whether you will get married. You don't know if you can ever have a child. You don't know how to have big markers in your life. And the response that you sort of get is just wait. And I have activist friends, and all of them. They are 80 now. They are still waiting. So some way or the other, there is an importance for a timeline, and it should not just be a community that's waiting for justice to happen. It is all the stakeholders that have to also join hands together and, make it happen. I find it a little amusing that every time it goes back to asking the community that, wait it out, work with the stakeholders. But where does it, when does this, kind of come back to a collective responsibility that we as a society must be equal? When are our politicians going to actually really believe in, equal rights? I mean, like, it just seems to me a little bit like, okay,
I take that argument.
Yeah.
I take that argument. No, I take that argument and I put that argument to Deepa. I don't want a legal argument to it, but I have a basic central argument to this, Deepa and Hitesh. What is being said is, the community is saying that and I welcome Harish Iyer also, who's joining us, who's the petitioner in this particular case. Harish, hi. So, what the community is saying, and tell me whether I'm reading this correctly, Harish. What the community is saying is that we are not asking for anything apart from what is granted to us in the Constitution, which is Article 14, equality before the law. Article 15, prevention of discrimination on any grounds, right? Place of birth, gender, and that should include sexual orientation as well, because what may have been called gender, during the framing of the Constitution would have to include sexual orientation in 2023. So what the argument being put here is, Hitesh, is that you are not giving me protection of life and personal liberty, Article 21. You're not giving me freedom of expression, Article 19. You're not giving me prohibition from discrimination, Article 15. You're not giving me even equality under the law, Article 14. And the community is asking you today, how can you deny me everything that the Constitution gives me? Hitesh, could you respond to that? I'll have Harish respond to you after that. Hitesh and Harish. Hitesh, then Harish.
I don't think the Supreme Court has said that you're not entitled for Arnab, I don't think the Supreme Court has said you're not entitled for fundamental rights. At the end of the day, as an individual, you are entitled for all the rights under 14, 15, 19 and 21. All the rights have been kept intact. What the question the court has answered, that right to marry is not a fundamental right. And that is a pronouncement of the court after considering all the features. They have considered the entire position of marriage, and they have said that the marriage is something which is a creation of the statute. It is a choice of a person whether to marry or not to marry, and the rights of the marriage, they flow from the statute, and one has to look at the yes, we are sensitive towards every individual, including the LGBT community, but you have to look at the practicalities. The laws of the marriage are not to be looked in the isolation.
What is practicality?
There are issues of succession, there are issues of maintenance, there are issues of all these issues are concerned. So therefore, at the end of the day, we have to make up the mind as to whether we as a country are ready to provide such rights. So I think
Harish,
till the judgment came, it was all about whether you have a fundamental right to marry. And now post the judgment, some of the lawyers for the petitioners who appeared in the court, they said, no, this was not about the fundamental right to marry. And then they are talking in platitudes and rhetorics. That is the problem. I don't think they were advised properly. The matter, according to me, I mean, like, the writing was written on the wall that you are asking something which is within the domain of the legislature. I sympathize with the community. I feel that, certain rights are concerned. Of course, they are entitled for their fundamental rights, but there is a method to seek such rights.
I think.
So you're saying they got their legal strategy wrong. Harish is responding. Harish Iyer, yes, please go ahead.
I think marriage should not be a heterosexual privilege, but an equal right granted to every individual, regardless of their gender, regardless of their sexual orientation. If the marriage equality verdict didn't give us equal rights, at least it should have segued a pathway for us. It should have created a pathway for us for civil unions. But rather what we got was platitudes, was beautiful English language, beautiful anecdotes and conversations that were happening over there. We didn't even get a pathway. The syntax was beautiful, the language was beautiful, there was no grammatical error, but there was zero pathway to marriage equality or any kind of what is marriage? Marriage is a legal is a legal contract that is given. I mean, if you remove all the other things associated with marriage, it's a legal contract. It's a legal contract for the right to inheritance. It's a legal contract for the right to medical. If one of us get in if we are in the hospital bed, the other person will have automatically the right to decide what to do with me. So that right is being given. We are asking for that basic right. There should have been at least some pathway or some direction to a pathway to some sort of legal recognition to our relationship. We would have been happy with that, and we would have built on that after a while over a period of time. What we are sad about is the fact that we just got English. We got beautiful phrases and beautiful language that was thrown again and again, but we didn't get any substance out of it. We don't want you to feel bad. We don't need people's sympathies. What we need is a pathway to equality, because equality is something that is guaranteed to us. We are equal citizens. We don't want to live on the breadcrumbs that are thrown at us. We don't want, we just want people to realize that every individual in this country should have equal rights. If there are heterosexual people who are marrying, you do not deserve the right to say that homosexual people cannot marry. We are adults. We are consenting adults. Section 377 read down. Section 377 was read down in the Navteej Singh Johar verdict. So we can have sex in private. So you're telling us that you can have sex, but you can never get married to each other. I think that goes against Bharatiya Sanskriti more than anything else.
Yeah, you see, I think the point. I'm glad, Harish, you said it out there. I'm tired of these Lutyens portals trying to portray today as a partial victory. It's not a partial victory. It's a complete defeat for the LGBTQ community. And someone should have the guts to say that, because you're going to have to pick up from where you've lost today and then pick up the fight. But to interpret this as saying partial victory is fundamentally wrong. Fundamentally wrong. Now, you heard that counter argument. Do I have any counter on the other side, Hitesh? You see, they are saying you snatched every hope away from us. And I think Harish is straightforward and brave in saying that it was the verbalization of the intent of the Supreme Court, and the way the Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court, looks at the particular matter is of no consequence unless the judgment moves in that direction. Of course, nobody can really, make this court think in one direction. But at the same time, the fundamental argument also Harish has put is society is not ready. Don't push it. Don't push it. People are saying don't push it. Changes are happening. Let us deal with the changes as they happen. You can't, do everything in one go. You can't make all the changes in one go. Relax. Let's go a little slow. Let's move one thing at a time. I understand where you're coming from, but it's going to take time. First, change society. Persuade. Go lobby with political parties, Harish. Make them agree with you. Let one political party have the guts to put this in their manifestos. What's your response to that, Harish?
I think we are, the community is, Sonal is, I am, we all are speaking to political parties. We are speaking to individuals over there. The route could be through the parliament, where we discuss with people and we get that thing. But the Solicitor General, Tushar Mehta, has very clearly stated what the view of he was the one who used the term urban elite. There are queer people there are queer people everywhere. There are queer people even over here. I can tell you there are queer people in Jodhpur. There are people in villages. There are queer people everywhere. This is neither urban nor it's elite. It's somewhere it's there everywhere. You have heard the stance of the government over there. So the judiciary was our last hope. But now that the ball has been thrown in the parliaments, in the government's this thing, we will speak. We will speak to every political party, every elected official, every elected official, and Arnab, let me also assure you that we will have conversations with them, and we will not just vote them up. we will vote them down. We will bring them down. If you do not stand up with the LGBTQIA plus community, you don't stand up with the queer community, we will not vote you up. We will also vote you down. And this is something, we might be a minority, but we are a strong minority.
Ritesh, you want to respond to that? Because even Sonal said earlier that the reason they feel let down so far is because they're not a vote bank.
I am all for the dialogue. Arnab, we are in a democracy. I am all for a dialogue. I am all for a consultation. And if they want to, use their democratic right, they are free to do so. But at the same time, I am trying to tell them that you have to recognize certain ground realities. The problem is they lost the matter in the Supreme Court because their arguments were based on a platitude and rhetorics. And if you will argue on the basis of platitude and rhetorics, you are going to get a platitude and rhetorics. The fact is that one has to understand the whole concept, as I mentioned to you, from the marriage. Say, I will give you one example. You have Parsi law of succession, you have Hindu law of succession, you have Muslim law of succession, you have every personal law has its own laws of succession. Then you have a personal laws of maintenance. How are you going to, by one stroke of a broad brush, going to change everything? You need to have a dialogue. You have to change the laws. You have to reflect. It should reflect the views of the society. So don't try to short circuit. Use your platform.
Well, now you bring a completely different spin.
And the process can be achieved by way of
that I would say since I've run short of time, that I would also appeal to the LGBTQ community in the country to support a uniform civil code. And I would like to tell them it is legally wrong to demand the rights of same-sex marriage but oppose the uniform civil code. The same people who are for LGBTQ rights and LGBTQ marriage are against the uniform civil code, and if same-sex marriages at the heart are the call of uniformity, I don't understand how people who are politically correct say uniform civil code is pro-Hindutva. So we are against uniform civil code, but we want same-sex marriage. These are legal complexities we'll have to look at. But I think it's an interesting debate. I would say, having said that, if the LGBTQ community considers the many strides it has taken, and many of them have started from a position of ground zero, all hope is not lost. I thank you for that debate. Ladies and gentlemen, when I am back on the other side, why I believe the war against the Hamas is our war too. I'll go into details of that when I'm back.